It seems like a lot of the things that we have been talking about are the 1960s. Student protests, right? We did Kent State on May 4th. This is another example of a student protest. Now remember, Kent State was 1970. This is 1960. So it's showing you a whole 10-year span of where that seemed to be dominating domestic climate, the social issues. But remember, the 1960s was a time of a lot of social upheaval and civil rights movements. And we went over historical eras, and you sort of know that that works with the 1960s. Even go back to Brown v. Board, that was 54, not too far before this. A lot of people, scholars, mark the beginning of these student movements with this event here. And this was in Berkeley, California. To this day, I mean, I haven't been on this campus in probably 20 years, but it still emanates from a lot of the history of what happened here. So what happened is there was a House committee. You may have heard of this House Committee on Un-American Activities, HUAC. It's fun to say. Okay, think of what's going on. Also, we have the Cold War. This is post-World War II. And this is the time of like the witch hunts. Who's a communist? Who is it? Are you a communist? Are you a communist? You are, aren't you? If you're a communist, you're going to be kicked out of the school. If you're a communist, you're going to lose your job. If you're a communist, we're not going to put you in another movie, right? Who's the communist, right? And this interrogation, these blacklists, a lot of people thought this violated your free speech. I mean, can you be a communist if you want to? Can you think some things that America does aren't always so swanky sometimes, right? So this committee actually started way before then in 1938, and it lasted pretty long time until 1975. Pretty much think when the Vietnam War is done with, if it's ever really done with, right? So remember, investigative committee is one of the things you should know. It's just a committee to have an investigation, like the 9/11 committee. And like there's going to be these January 6th insurrection investigative committees. It's not a standing committee. It's created for a special purpose, right? That's why it's also, these investigative committees are types of what you would call a special committee or a select committee. It's not a permanent standing committee like the Energy and Commerce Committee. Okay? Yes?
So this is a select committee and it's investigative, but this isn't congressional oversight, right?
Right. That is more, congressional oversight is more looking
That's
inward
like
at word. Right. Like, are we even doing the right thing here? No, that's a good clarification. However, this did become a permanent standing committee for a little while. So this is one of the few times when an investigative committee actually began a permanent committee, but it's no longer a permanent committee because they got rid of it. But I just wanted to show you the change in things. Okay, so I mentioned this is the historical era. This was around. No one really, I shouldn't say no one. Some people were critical of these communist witch hunts, but it just seemed like the American thing to do at the time. So most people didn't complain because you had to watch your own back. But by the Vietnam War, it became very unpopular. Like enough of this HUAC nonsense. Okay. So I wanted to give you an example. There's lots of examples if you look online of, did this committee violate the First Amendment? And On the Waterfront was a movie. So I tried to find like scholarly type things just to reference for you guys. You can have scholarly articles on movies. My undergraduate thesis was all about the Cold War as seen through films of the 40s and 50s, right? How it revealed how all those alien movies weren't really a fear of aliens. They were fears of communists, right? Yeah, so yeah. For someone who doesn't watch movies at all, I guess it was interesting. So the idea is that, you see it says the early 1950s were a bleak time for freedom of speech and association. Witch hunts, blacklists, and loyalty oaths were the order of the day. Do you know, when I started teaching, there were teachers that were older than me who said when they took their teacher oath, they had to swear to fight against communism in the classroom. right? That was actually part of your teaching thing, right? So a lot of people, retrospect, were like, wow, a lot of this violated the First Amendment for a lot of reasons. And in fact, it made its way to the Supreme Court. So I know we're all worried about these Supreme Court cases. Braden versus U.S., you don't need to know this for AP Gov. So don't think like, oh gosh, yet one more court case. However, who knows? Maybe this is the one they end up comparing. It could be. But this is just to show you that this issue actually did make it to the Supreme Court. All right, so this guy, Braden, was supposed to testify before this committee. And he refused to answer. And it didn't go to the Supreme Court because it was his Fifth Amendment right, where you plead the Fifth. It was he thought what they were doing violated his First Amendment rights. So what if I said something about communism? Right? So what if I said something about this or that? It's my First Amendment right. It went to the Supreme Court, and it was upheld. No, Braden, you can get in trouble. They have the right to do this. It was 5-4, however, so we know sort of what that means, right? Notice the dates of the Supreme Court case, and this is another reason why I mentioned it. It was argued in 1960, decided in 1961. So November, this is what? Do the math, 6 months after these student protests in Berkeley. So you really understand the context of what was going on in America at the time. So my last slide was just to do a quick review. Remember, for whatever reason, and maybe it's on purpose, of the Supreme Court cases you need to know, a heck of a lot of them are from the 1960s. So before this, you have Brown v. Board in 54, and then you have a nice 8-year break, and you get 4 from the 1960s. Okay? Engel Vitale, that is the religious issue in the New York schools, praying or not, right? Baker Carr, one man, one vote. Tennessee, right? Were they not redistricting like they were supposed to every 10 years? So it was really a matter of, can the Supreme Court make the states uphold their constitutions? Gideon Wainwright to an attorney. All right. See, remember the guy who was arrested and they're like, yeah, I don't have an attorney. And they said, no, you have the right to an attorney. And Tinker Des Moines, I don't know. I think everyone just knows Tinker Des Moines. Like, do you guys have an issue with that? Right? Tinker Des Moines, the kids with the armbands, freedom of speech. Think of Tinkerbell with an armband if you have to. I don't know. Yes, Kadar?
I know, I can't remember. I don't remember. Wait, I thought that was Miranda v. U.S. Is that what's required?
Miranda is your Miranda rights, like that they have to tell you have the right to an attorney. They have to actually tell you those things.
Okay,
right.
So my original question was, all those Supreme Court cases that decide which of our rights do and don't apply when we're on school grounds or
yes.
in students of schools, do those apply to public universities as well?
I would imagine so. I don't see why not. I wouldn't see why not. And you also have some schools are sort of supportive of their student activism, and then some schools being not as supportive. And it often depends on just, is it a private school, a public school? What is the social climate, right? The California social climate is much different than, say, the Kent State, Ohio's social political climate, right? But 69, Tinker Des Moines, I think, sort of relates to this, what was going on. You see, this is high school students, but you see an example of student activism being very significant in the 1960s. So whether it's 1960, them protesting the House Un-American Committee visit, or 69 protesting the Vietnam War. And you see how it all sort of ties in, right? That during Vietnam, the House Un-American Committee became very unpopular with the American public. All right, so things you can tie this into, you can tie it into the investigative committee or any type of committee, really, if you want to do special committee or it is not, or how it became for a little while a standing committee. You can connect it to the First Amendment. And if you want to, you can connect it to any of these Supreme Court cases just to explain, especially I think Tinker Des Moines, maybe a little bit of Engel Vital, right? About your amendments, your freedoms, and just, the 1960s. The more we look at these, the more that we hear them, the more they'll stick in our head. All right, so I'm going to stop this.